This is Greg Troutwine with Maritime Reporter TV, and we're here again today with Captain Andrew Kinsey, Senior Marine Risk Consultant, Allianz Global Corporate and Specialty, to discuss the recent report, the Allianz Risk Barometer for 2021. Andrew, first and foremost, thank you very much for joining us again.
Thank you, Greg. Pleasure to speak with you again.
Oh, very good. So, Andrew, we'll steer our viewers to the full report at the end of this segment. But to start, can you summarize the top three risks to businesses in 2021, aka the COVID trio?
Sure thing. Happy to. And I just wanted to touch on the fact that we kind of look at this Allianz risk barometer as our sailing directions for 2021 as we develop our voyage plans. You know, some of the things you learn at sea work well in the business world, and that's one of them. Have a plan, be flexible, and be able to adjust it. But for the top three global business risks, we have our business interruption, a pandemic outbreak, and cyber incidents. And those are our top three global business risks. But then also the report, the barometer drills down into marine and shipping specific related risks as well. And not unsurprising given the global trade which we're involved in. The top three maritime and shipping are pandemic outbreak, business interruption. Three is natural catastrophe, and then followed by four, which is cyber. So they mirror each other both with the macro and the general. So it's an interesting dynamic and not at all surprising consider the trade we're in.
Obviously, supply chain disruption has been a recurring theme throughout the pandemic. Based on your experience and your contacts, what changes have you already seen? What changes do you expect to see to the global supply chain to help it be more resilient when, not if, this happens again?
Well, it's an interesting question. Thank you. And it's really the downside of global production and supply chains that we're looking at here, and that it's an interconnected world we're working in and living in. And these supply chain issues are if we look at, let's just say, if we look at a specific segment, vehicle production, for example. Right now, with global vehicle production, it's not the bulkers that we're looking at that have an ore shortage. It's not the steel that's the issue, but it is actually the availability of microchips that is impacting vehicle production globally. And due to the interconnected nature of the supply chain, those microchips have been in such high demand for gaming consoles and for things that people are using stuck at home. Computers, laptops, tablets, gaming consoles have created a tremendous impact. And the 5G microchip is got a higher return than a vehicle microchip. So excess production goes to the one that brings the greatest return, supply and demand. Now, what we're seeing here is that certain builders have a more robust profile in their supply chain. Toyota, for example, following the 2011 earthquake, Tokushika earthquake, they looked at their chip production since it was so adversely affected, along with airbags. You might remember that. There was a big slew of airbag recalls after because they had to go out to different vendors. But what they looked at is they took concrete steps to make their supply chain more robust and also to keep more inventory on hand. However, that increases the inventory. It's more money in their out of their pocket into inventory. It's also more storage, more warehousing. However, Toyota has been able to continue production without any slowdown because in 2011 they suffered this, but they learned their lesson. So this is really what we're looking at. It's supply chain. It's also inventory. And when we're looking at these issues and talking with our assureds, there's really three specific aspects of this. It's a short, medium, and long term. So short term, look for a different vendor. Medium term, can we diversify? Long term, do we look at bringing this in-house? Do we look at bringing it locally? How do we address these supply and demand concerns? Because it will happen again.
Cybersecurity are certainly not new on the list of risks for 2021, but can you discuss how COVID-19 specifically has enhanced cyber risk?
Yes, it has, and it's actually a multifaceted impact. One of the keys is we're working remotely. If we have the ability to work remotely, we are working remotely. And as a result, those platforms that we connect through or work on have to be secure. And in many cases, they were not. And in many cases, they continue not to be. And it's the challenge that you are in an interconnected world, but just by the nature of that interconnectivity, we are increasing our exposure to cyber risks. Not only are we increasing that exposure, those avenues are being actively targeted by individuals who are looking to take advantage of it. So it's, similar to what happened when we started getting a lot of Amazon deliveries and people started getting stuff stolen off their front porches. Oh, it didn't happen before. Well, you didn't have a bunch of boxes being dropped on your front porch again. Okay, so these are the things. It's supply and demand. Well, it's also an opportunity, and that's the way theft is as well. So I refer to them as some of the digitalization dangers. Okay, and cyber is part of that digitalization, just like our cloud-based things. But it's the fact that we have to be able to rely on them and they have to be secure. So a remote workforce, remote inventories, all these things. And we also have to worry about then it's more than just changing your password.
Excellent. All right. Well, I guess hand in hand with the question on cybersecurity is the growing digitalization of the supply chain in general. It has some obvious efficiency benefits, but digitalization is indeed a double-edged sword. Um, how do you see the increased dependence on digitalization or digital potentially leaving the supply chain, the economy itself, more vulnerable?
Well, the key to the digitalization is it has to work all the time. And that's the Achilles heel. It's like when you're dealing with IT. Yeah, it worked yesterday. Yes, but it's not working today. And that's really one of the keys here. It's not just ideal conditions. It has to work in less than ideal conditions. It has to be able to respond and adapt. So when you can't connect to the cloud, it doesn't matter how much of your inventory is in the cloud, secure in the cloud. It's so secure you can't get to it. It's like these guys who have Bitcoin accounts and forget how to log into it, you know? So yeah, it's really secure. It's so secure you can't touch it. So what we're looking at from this is how can you make sure that it's secure? It's digitalization that everyone wants, but it can be relied upon. So you have to make sure it's not like trying to watch direct TV in the rain. It's kind of the key to it. Make sure it works.
So, Andrew, as I think you might agree, identifying risk is one thing, mitigating it is an entirely different ballgame. What can you leave as some salient bits of advice to our viewers on what they can do today to help them identify, manage, and mitigate risk better in their businesses?
I'm happy to. So, from a risk ID and risk mitigation standpoint, we look at mitigation as being those steps we take to reduce the adverse effect of what we identify. So, there's four accepted strategies for risk mitigation: acceptance, avoidance, limitation, or transference. If we look at limitation, it's the most common. I equate limitation to changing course, increasing our CPA when we know a danger is there. And transference is what we're the business we're in here at Allianz. Easiest easiest method of transference is insurance. But the key to all these is communication. And that's what we stress right now. We are going into our 11th month of lockdown and lack of business travel and no face-to-face meetings. As a result, communication is getting more and more difficult because we get into this morass of constant meetings, but we're not saying enough, I feel. So it's bringing in a fresh point of view, discussing it. utilizing the assets you have to give you a new view of your risk profile. And quite honestly, that's what we do at Allianz. We are risk consultants. We look at and work with our assureds, identify their problems, and talk with them about different strategies to mitigate or limit those risks.
Excellent. Andrew, as always, we appreciate your time.
My pleasure. Thank you very much for having me.